Federal government directs support to expand capacity of Walter Smith Modular Refinery from 5 to 50,000 barrels per day.
There is no doubt that the construction of the second phase of the project will create bigger additional employment opportunities.
Towards building economic resilience, federal government to foster private sector partnerships.
Improve the business environment so that businesses can invest here and grow and pay taxes.
Lagos Judicial Panel of Inquiry meets for 12th sitting as 2 scheduled petitioners are reported dead.
And today on Good Morning Nigeria, we shall discuss the aftermath of the NSAS protests.
Kingsley, conversation on the NSAS protest, of course, is still ongoing, as well as the wanton destruction that followed. But since then, states across the country have cleaned up their streets. Exams, which were suspended as a result, have also resumed, and businesses vandalized by hoodlums are gradually picking up. But as it turns out, Nigeria is still having to deal with the aftermath of the protest, especially the Lekki toll gate incident.
Very true, Claire. Now, those events have influenced opinions both positively and negatively. In fact, substantiated and unsubstantiated information is still floating in the social media space and even on some mainstream international media channels. And this, of course, has attracted reactions from the Nigerian government challenging the veracity of some of the accounts.
Indeed, one of those accounts is the one by the Atlanta-based cable news network, otherwise known as CNN, which was titled, "How a Bloody Night of Bullets and Brutality Quashed a Young Protest Movement," unquote. Now, that report, which the federal government insists is unverified and one-sided in its narrative, has been generating, well, some heated debate.
The federal government has written a petition to CNN demanding an immediate and exhaustive investigation into its report on the Lekki tollgate shooting to determine its authenticity and conformity, according to the federal government, to basic standards of journalism.
But despite the petition, CNN again, that's yesterday, November the 24th, posted what it called an updated version with the hashtag NSAS Lekki massacre on Twitter, standing by its earlier report that unarmed protesters were shot at by the Nigerian army. Now, this latest post has been retweeted over 5,000 times with over 7,000 likes and still counting.
Now, the Minister of Information and Culture, Lai Mohammed, who described CNN's report of the alleged massacre as a massacre without bodies, has called on friends and relatives of those who were allegedly killed to come forward with proof. Now, he's also stressed the need for the regulation of the social media in Nigeria to, in his view, guard against the spread of more fake news and disinformation.
So while the Judicial Panel of Inquiry sitting in Lagos works to unravel what really transpired at the Lekki toll gate plaza on the 20th October 2020, the federal government is also anxious to bring Nigerians up to date on their issues, as well as addressing concerns about the recession Nigeria is currently facing. Now, following data released by the National Bureau of Statistics, NBS.
All right. Now, of course, we're going to have the Minister of Information and Culture join us in our conversation segment this morning. And he will have the opportunity of reacting to a number of these matters, particularly those in the aftermath of the NSAS protests, plus the fine imposed on 3 broadcast stations by the National Broadcasting Commission. And it's on this point that we'd like to welcome you to today's edition of Good Morning Nigeria. We're broadcasting on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. And I'm Kingsley Osadolo.
It's a beautiful and bright day here in Abuja, the nation's capital. And I am Claire Dilabo Abdul Rasek. As always, we welcome you to the midweek edition of the program. And in our tradition, we shall bring you our complimentary segments, and that will include newspaper review, business, and of course, others. But right now, we are being joined by Blessing to bless us this morning with the highlights of the morning news. Good morning, Blessing. Good to see you again.
Yeah, good to see you. You're blessed. Now, welcome to the news. The Ministry of Petroleum Resources, DPR, and the NNPC have been directed to give the necessary support to Msme Refining and Petrochemical Company, including access to crude oil and condensate feedstock towards expanding the capacity of its modular refinery to 50,000 barrels per day. President Muhammadu Buhari gave the directive at a virtual inauguration of the company's 5,000 barrels per day modular refinery in Imo State.
The construction of the second phase of the project will create bigger additional employment opportunities. Let me use this opportunity to congratulate the local community and the people of Imo State for hosting this refinery, which I trust will bring prosperity and economic development.
The Senate has received executive communication requesting the confirmation of Professor Mahmood Yakubu as chairman of the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, for a second term. The request is in line with the provision of Section 154, subsection 1 of the 1999 Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria as amended.
Pleased to present for confirmation by the Senate the nomination of Professor Mahmood Yakubu for appointment as Chairman, Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, for a second and final term.
Vice President Yemi Osinbajo says government wants to see greater commitment and a plan that is as aggressive as the country's aspirations from the private sector. The Vice President during a webinar with some French business leaders under the auspices of the Franco-Nigeria Chamber of Commerce and Industry notes that the private sector commitment need to align to the federal government's backward integration policy, noting that over the years, many companies have committed to backward integration, but have simply not been as diligent and faithful with those promises.
Our economies, it's very evident that we cannot do this without collaboration. And meaningful collaboration is really quite critical here. Collaboration between countries and between sectors has become more important than ever.
While Minister of Finance, Budget and National Planning, Zainab Ahmed, says government is committed to fostering partnership with the private sector for resilience as the Nigerian Economic Summit ends. She restates that the borrowing level of Nigeria is not on the high side and building infrastructure remains key to achieving the developmental goals of the nation.
It's either we borrow these loans and do them now and improve the business environment so that businesses can invest here and grow and pay taxes, or we sit back and say until we're able to afford to, then we will do it.
Minister of Transportation Rotimi Amechi says the massive investment in the rail sector is to achieve greater economic development and ease movement of cargo and passengers. The minister, during his monthly inspection of the Lagos-Ibadan railway project, also apologized to Nigerians for service interruptions on the Abuja-Kaduna route as a result of faulty locomotives, promising that more locomotives and wagons will be delivered soon to boost capacity.
For over 3-4 months, and they've not lost anybody. The implication that COVID is no longer an excuse. So we will insist, and we've told the Permanent Secretary and I, and the Chairman of NRC, with the Managing Director and the Director of NRC, we've agreed that the technical committee should meet with them to ensure that they put not policies, measures that will ensure that the pace of work is increased.
Two of the petitioners scheduled to appear at the 12th sitting of the Lagos Judicial Panel of Inquiry and Restitution for Victims of Police Brutality and other related matters have passed away. Their demise did not deter hearing on their petitions. Let's get some COVID-19 cases. Now, new COVID-19 update of cases revealed about 168 cases by the Nigerian Center for Disease Control, increasing the total number of confirmed cases to 66,607 in Nigeria. Of these new cases, Federal Capital Territory has 61, Lagos 50, Kaduna 27, Oyo has 12, Rivers 6, Katsina 5, Ogun 3, Kwara has 2, Edo and Kano states confirmed 1 new case each. This latest figure brings the overall number of cases in Lagos to 23,018 cases. That of the Federal Capital Territory has risen to 6,576 cases, and Plateau is with 3,805 cases. 3,127 cases are currently active, with 62,311 recovered patients discharged and 1,169 dead, unfortunately. And that's the morning news. Good Morning Nigeria continues with Claire and Kingsley after this break. Good morning.
Now it's time for business news with our correspondent, Ronami Egirani, standing by with a report on the Monetary Policy Committee briefing which took place yesterday.
The general consensus at the CBN's Monetary Policy Committee briefing on Tuesday was that the current Nigerian economic outlook remains largely uncertain. In an attempt to reinvigorate the country's COVID-battered economy, the members of the MPC have decided to retain the key lending rate at 11.5%. They also decided to retain the asymmetric corridor at 100 plus and minus 700 basis points around the decided lending rate in order to ensure liquidity and economic growth. While reading the communique, CBN Governor Godwin Emefiele noted that through a unanimous vote, the committee resolved to retain the liquidity ratio and cash reserve ratio at 30% and 27.5% respectively. The Monetary Policy Committee says it expects some positive growth by the first quarter of 2021. And on the stock market on Tuesday, the 24th of November 2020, despite a massive reduction in the volume of trades made, we're talking about 200 million less than Monday's volume, the all-share index still experienced a slight uptick, closing at 34,340.56 points. The total value of trades made dropped drastically as well, closing at 4.69 billion naira, a 2.6 billion naira decline. Market capitalization remained relatively stable at 17.9 trillion naira. With business news, I'm Ronami Egirani.
All right, thank you very much, Ronami Egirani, for the business package. Up next is the newspaper review. Join us in a moment.
Our newspaper reviewer, Baya Tebe, is right here with us as always. Baya, good morning and welcome.
Thank you, Kingsley. Good morning. Good morning, Claire. Good morning, Nigeria.
Baya. Good to see you.
Good to see you too.
Kingsley,
All right,
go ahead?
Yeah, let's begin with the Nation newspaper. That's one of the 3 papers we have this morning. And above the name flag, it says, Coast clear for Okonjo-Iweala as WTO DG. Opponent withdraws. That's the writer to that headline. National Assembly gives budget defense deadline, page 3. And 2 other headlines there on the front page says, multi-million-dollar customs scanners rotting away at port. Amnesty Office owing contractors 71.4 billion naira, says DQ. And below the nameplate, Nigeria not included in 15,000 US dollar visa bond. And court revokes Maynard's son's bail. A lead story says with a double-decker headline and a kicker, Fashola to APC, respect your zoning plan in 2023. There was agreement during formation, and Uzodinma warns against Southeast confrontation. Those are two riders to that. South-South zone calls for reform and power devolution. That's another headline there on the front page. And Naira value not decided by parallel market, says Emefiele. It's NPC, that's the retaining current rates. Now, the photograph there on the front page says abandoned. That's senior customs officials briefing members of the House of Reps Committee on Customs and Excise during their inspection of the multi-million-dollar customs high-caliber mobile scanning machines rotting away at the Apapa port in Lagos. Our own scanner is rotting away at the port. Maybe they haven't cleared it themselves. The customs to clear its own goods, and they're still right there at the ports. Well, it's a bit curious. And then right at the foot of the front page of the paper says Gombe Assembly sacks Speaker and others. And Benue to battle yellow fever with 39 million naira. That's on page 6.
Okay, Kingsley, thank you. Let's take the Daily Trust newspaper. And the lead story is political. It says APC zoning agreement should be respected in 2023. And that's attributed to Minister Fashola. Comes 3 riders with it. Says we must deliver on our promises to retain power. And then there was a deal to shift power to Southwest after Buhari. That's Chieftain. And the last rider there will cross the bridge when we get there. Attributed to APC party official. Details of that you can find on page 5. There are other stories trending just beneath the nameplate. Buhari inaugurates 5,000 barrels per day modular refinery in Imo State. Details of that on page 21. And Kuje prison restricts access to Ndume as senators visit. You can also pick it up on page 5. But there is a very, very instructive picture story I'd like you to see. And it's very encouraging. Well, I wouldn't know what led to that. But the picture story you see there are those of residents in Plateau State who looted items from warehouses, private and public companies during the #EndSARS crisis, returning the items at the new government house in Drayfield, Jos yesterday and begging the owners for forgiveness. So, again, residents in Plateau State who looted items from warehouses, private and public companies during the EndSARS crisis returned items at the new government house in Drayfield, Jos yesterday and begged owners for forgiveness. WTO, coast clear for Okonjo-Iweala as Korean candidate drops, page 34. And CBN retains 11.5% interest rate, worries over parallel forex market. Details of that on page 21. Now, we're not afraid of restructuring, and that's Rufai. And of course, those are some of the stories trending on the front page of the Daily Trust. But I think this picture is very, very Bayo, I don't know what you think about it.
On that note, Reverend Ezekiel Dakumu of Christ Church in the nation led them to government house, and they were received by the secretary to the Plateau State government, and they pleaded their repentance, and they said they are sorry. Among the items that they returned were food items that were taken from warehouses, and they were received by the secretary to the Plateau State government, Professor Danladi Atu. He enjoined the youth of Plateau not to listen to incitement from people who are not from Plateau, but who came into Plateau to orchestrate destruction and disappear. Meanwhile, Governor Lalong is expected to say, well, you are pardoned, sin no more and loot no more. That is the expectation. Meanwhile, there are high hopes for the Dr. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala to become the Director General of the World Trade Organization. This is sequel to information published by the Washington Trade Daily that suggests that South Korea has given indication that they are withdrawing the candidate of Moon Hee. And if they withdraw the candidate of Yu Moon Hee, it means that Okonjo-Iweala will be the only candidate.
The only woman standing.
But the World Trade Organization agrees by consensus. 164 nations had voted for Dr. Okonjo-Iweala, but United States has raised an objection. Now that South Korea had withdrawn the candidate, there's no basis for objection again, so WTO will eventually meet and agree on a consensus. Meanwhile, there is a very high hope about the nation that went into recession at the end of the third quarter. The governor of the central bank says that expectations are that Nigeria will exit this recession by the end of 2020. Why? When the MPR met, they maintained all parameters, which involve the asymmetric corridor, the credit reserve ratio, as well as liquidity ratio. They say policy measures have been put in place and the economy, it is hoped, will bounce back. MPR was retained as 11.5%. The governor of the central bank says that inflation is currently about 14.2% and is projected to come down by the first quarter of 2021. The current recession is described as the worst in 33 years. Nevertheless, central bank says that they are going to make sure that they sustain all the valued interventions that they hope will boost the economy, and they are hoping that the economy will recover. The family of the vendor who was shot by the security aid of the speaker has written to the speaker demanding 500 million as compensation. The father of the late vendor, Mr. Okorie Okereke, and his younger brother mandated a lawyer to demand 500 million from the speaker. They say 500 million can never replace their son, husband, brother, and breadwinner. However, but it will at least mitigate the trauma and hardship of the premature device. However, the family gave 7 days for the speaker to respond. Otherwise, they will go to court.
Okay, yeah, Bayo, the story on the multi-million-dollar scanners that you have the headline on the front page, say, rotting away at the Apapa port in Lagos. The story on page 25 of the Nation newspaper is indicating that the scanners, 3 of them, worth several millions of dollars, they're high-caliber mobile scanning machines belonging to the Customs Service, were put in use, but after 2015, the contract had been revoked, and since then, the new contractor doesn't have, according to the report, the capacity to operate the scanners. And so that's why it's been left the way it is. They say for political reasons, sometime in 2015, the one in Apapa was taken away and given to another company, and it doesn't have the capacity to manage it. So that's why it's been abandoned, as it were, all 3 of them, but no indication as to probably what has happened to the other 2. And you recall that sometime in the not too distant past, there were reports of arms that were being smuggled in through the ports. A few of them were apprehended. But daily, the ordeal of having to physically examine containers is part of the reason for the delay in the clearance of goods at the ports, whether in Apapa or Tinkan. And here you have mobile scanners that ordinarily should be put to use. And unfortunately, it appears that they're stuck.
Well, it's very sad because one of the causes of the congestion at the ports is because, one, apparently there are delays, and secondly, is because they're not properly regulating the tons of trucks that come to clear goods. Ports around the world do all those by technology. In fact, in some instances, as goods are leaving point of departure in China or India, the receiving port is able to monitor the movement of the goods across the world. They do that by means of technology. And immediately it reaches the port, within 24 hours, most ports make sure that goods that arrive at their ports are cleared. And one of the measures that will have helped with these scanners that the custom depends so much on to ensure that items that come into the country are safe. While I think it's an issue of contract and politics. Other than that, why will a scanner be installed and later on be removed because the contract terms have been violated? But
there's this other story. I read it. You were talking about it a while ago. That's the MPC meeting, Monetary Policy Committee meeting. The headline on the front page of the Nation says, Naira value not decided by parallel market, says Emefiele. It's always been a common tendency for people to say, oh no, the real value of the naira is what you get on the parallel market rather than what, of course, you have in the, shall we say, official window. Now, they think, who are those that patronize the parallel market, and who are those that patronize the official, let's say, the CBN window? And I think that those are the things to consider. Certainly, large importers will go through the CBN, and they have their own records, they have their own processes. And then for maybe small-time users of Forex, and if you want quick fixes, you go through the parallel market. And why the parallel market should be the determinant of the real value of the naira is worrisome. As we have seen, there has been speculation in recent times on the naira, and there's been a spike in the value of the dollar against the naira.
Well, wherever you operate a parallel market, it will undermine the stability of your currency exchange. I remember one of the first time I ever traveled to UK, you could exchange naira on the street. But later on, they came with bureau de change, and you will never be able to exchange your currency on any parallel market any longer. And that helped to stabilize their own current currency. Here, it's a backdoor thing, and we seem to encourage it and say, we recognize it as parallel market.
It's been difficult to arrive at a convergence, Bayo, and especially, as you say, with a lot of people patronizing the parallel market anyway. But just before we go, I like Daily Trust, of course, giving us some food for thought. So here is food for thought for you. And it's, of course, on page 2 of the Daily Trust. The secret of joy in work is contained in one word: excellence. To know how to do something well is to enjoy it. Pearl Buck. So, enjoy what you do well and attain excellence.
Fine. We have the editorial. I mentioned 3 papers: Daily Trust, The Nation, and The Punch. Its editorial is at page 14, and the title is Illegal Detentions, Time for Judges to Wake Up. In part, the editorial says that the Chief Justice of the Federation had last week warned judges of lower courts to stop issuing the remand orders, especially when the court lacks the requisite jurisdiction to entertain such matters. And it also adds that the continuous refusal of state and federal chief judges to appoint judicial officers to inspect detention centers as mandated by the Administration of Criminal Justice Act has also emboldened law enforcement agencies to illegally detain suspects.
Well, I just wanted to draw attention to the commendation coming from the U.S. mission. And it says, our hats off to Dr. Onyema Ogwagu, a Nigerian at Yale, who helped in the development of COVID-19 vaccine. That is a positive development for Nigeria. Dr. Onyema graduated from University of Calabar in 2003. He read medicine. His father was a former vice chancellor of Abuja State University. His mother is a professor of sociology. So he has been born into a family of research. And as part of his research at Yale, he was part of the party that developed the Pfizer vaccine. The Pfizer vaccine has possibilities, but there is also a danger with it. It has to be kept at a temperature below -15 to 20 degrees centigrade. That is bad news for us in Africa. Wow. But the latest development is the one by AstraZeneca, the Oxford group. That one does not require to undergo that kind of deep temperature preservation. So far, there are about 5 possibilities of vaccines now. Sputnik from Russia, Pfizer from the US, Moderna, and also Sino vaccine from China, which has not been mentioned.
Where is my yellow?
Thanks a lot. I mean, it's an issue that we have to focus on. Already, don't forget, there is also international politics.
Yes.
The West is already demarketing the vaccine by Russia, saying that the Russians are allegedly cutting corners in developing their own vaccine.
That's what they claim.
We'll see if it is good for the Russians and it saves them from coronavirus. Congratulations to them. Bye.
Okay. Thanks very much.
See you tomorrow.
Yes,
okay,
I saw you
Good Morning
today.
Nigeria, and we are live on the network service of the NTA. We'll take a short break now. All right, you're still watching Good Morning Nigeria. We're reaching you live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. Cable News Network, that CNN, has released yet another report on the Lekki toll gate incident, which it says contains some new evidence. Let's first take a look at that before we welcome our guests and then kick off our conversation.
This is government CCTV footage from surveillance cameras overlooking Lekki Tollgate. Recorded without sound, it was shown as evidence in the judicial panel. You see soldiers approaching, firing shots here and here. We lined up the footage and it corroborates our previous reporting to show the first time we see and hear gunshots. Notice the building to the right of your screen. Here is the same moment from that building.
They are releasing fire. They are releasing fire.
CNN geolocated and verified the footage you see to mark the exact time and place. Moments later, more CCTV footage. People alarmed. Here is the exact same moment from the other side of the gate. Shots can be heard. But the CCTV doesn't capture everything. This is what it shows at the time we believe shots are fired towards the protesters. The surveillance camera pans away. But this is what you see on the ground. In videos obtained by CNN, it appears to show the army shooting into the crowd here and again at the top of your screen here. At the judicial panel, the CCTV footage stops at around 8 o'clock. The Lekki Concession Company says this is because it was tampered with. What it doesn't show is this crucial moment where DJ Switch live streams on Instagram after 8 p.m.
Everybody look at this. These are the bullets that were falling. They were falling by our side that were dodging bullets.
CNN has verified that these bullet casings are from live ammunition. They are of mixed origin. Some are Serbian. This one from 2005. Former and current Nigerian military sources verified to us that these munitions are currently in use by the Nigerian army. At a hearing for the Judicial Panel of Inquiry, the army made an admission.
The soldiers will be given both live and blank bullets. In this particular case, we saw that these protests had been infiltrated by some hoodlums.
But eyewitnesses and families we spoke to say the ammunition used that night by Nigerian authorities was very real.
This is where I was shot, and the bullet went through my back.
Up until this point, the army had denied they had live bullets at all on that night. It confirms a key finding in our investigation, that there was live ammunition at the scene. This admission is the latest in a series of constantly shifting narratives as to what happened on October 20th at Lekki Tollgate. The Minister of Information and Culture, Lai Mohammed, said that the army fired blank ammunition into the air. He also dismissed CNN's investigation as fake news and misinformation. Now, in the aftermath of our reporting, both the United States and the United Kingdom are calling on Nigeria to ensure that its investigation is free and fair.
All right, what you have just watched is the report posted by CNN on November the 24th. It called it an updated version of its earlier report on the unarmed protest, or what went on at the Lekki toll gate. So let's get started with our conversation, and let me quickly introduce our guest on today's program, Minister of Information and Culture, Lai Mohammed. He's right here with us. Honorable Minister, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you, Claire.
Yes. So, Kisley, you want to take up?
No, I was just wondering. I mean, Honorable Minister, you had earlier responded to the CNN's report and followed up with a petition to the Vice President in charge of communications, and they said they stood by their story. And now they've done the updated version. I was just wondering, you stated your case quite clearly. I mean, is there any point in continuing? They said, I said, we said, they didn't say, and so on and so forth. Some of the points you made at your press conference were very lucid.
See, Kingsley, you see, CNN is grasping at straws. They're desperate. The so-called recent development. This film we just watched, we've seen it before. It's nothing but a rehash of the old CNN story. There's nothing new that has been brought out there. If anything, it contradicts the position of CNN. What we're asking CNN is, where is the evidence? Where are the bodies? The military has been consistent. They went to the toll gate. They fired blank ammunition. CNN has not been able, with all the kind of development, to contradict that position. And the issues we've raised remain very germane, which are that CNN contravened the basic principles of journalism, which is fairness and balance in the stories. In the story, one, CNN did this story without even contacting the federal government for its own side of the story. Two, CNN relied on second-hand, third-hand narratives. BBC reporter for Pigeon Service, Damilola Banjo, was at the toll gate with her editor, and she said clearly, soldiers fired into the air, not into protesters. Who are we going to believe? The person who is on the spot, or a fellow who is thousands of miles away? You see, until CNN is able to respond to the issues we raised, all these are just grasping at straws. The same manner when the brigadier in cross-examination, Brigadier Taiwo, said yes, they did go to the toll gate with both live and blank ammunition. That proves nothing, because what the brigadier said, that it's normal standard procedure for you to go to a scene like that with both live and blank ammunition. But you don't fire the blank ammunition until you are threatened, and that they did not fire live ammunition. So I don't see what this story, I don't see what it proves. Nothing. Except that, you see, they have been caught in the glare of their own fake news, and they are trying to escape.
Okay, the petition of the federal government against what CNN put out demanded for balance. I accuse CNN of lack of balance.
Yes, we did.
Lack of accuracy.
And lack of fairness.
And lack of credibility of sources.
Yes, sir.
In terms of balance, you are the chief information officer for this country. Were you ever contacted by the city?
I was never contacted. But you see, we are not only accusing them of lack of balance or fairness, we're also accusing them of basing their stories on videos sourced from social media. We're also saying that CNN is very inconsistent. And I have to apologize to everybody for that. On the 23rd of October this year, CNN tweeted that 38 protesters were killed at the toll gate from their own verified handle on the 23rd of October. A month later, after their so-called investigation, they reduced the number to 1. That's the inconsistency of CNN. 2, CNN sourced its story from unverified sources. Even at that, it doctored even the same tape. The tape of Godson Uyi that they relied so much on, it's a 57 minutes, 5-second tape. We studied it, and it's clear that CNN was less than honest. Because if you study that tape, the 13th minute of that tape, you will hear some voices saying, oh, our boys have come, in lingo. At 20 minutes of that tape, you also see that conclusively, Godson is saying that hoodlums are the ones shooting. All this had been cut out from the CNN tape. And about 3 or 4 other areas like that. So this is why we are so confident in our position that CNN not only breached the basic principle of fairness and balance, it also sourced its story from unverified sources. And you can imagine CNN saying that it contacted about 100 protesters and their families, yet no one single call came to the federal government. So this is where we put it very clearly in our letter to Mr. Hawkins, that we demand that CNN investigates that report because it's irresponsible, it's unfair, and that they should do the needful. We have received an acknowledgement from Mr. Hawkins. He thanked us for our letter and told us that our letter has been passed to the editorial team. But this is without prejudice to whatever decisions the federal government decides to take on the matter, because we won't sit by and allow CNN or any news organization to throw the country to another war based on fake news.
I just wonder, Honorable Minister, what is the greater concern of the Nigerian government against the background of what you have explained with regard to the CNN report? I'm asking this question because, clearly CNN is an influential international channel, and we saw how a number of foreign governments responded to the initial accounts as to what transpired on the 20th of October at the Lekki Toll Plaza. And currently, the British Parliament is meeting on the issue and threatening sanctions. And I think a number of other foreign countries have also indicated that they might take out actions against the Nigerian government. On what basis are they being informed by all of this? Is that part of the concern? Do you find any linkage between what CNN put out and then what's happening in the Parliament as well as foreign capitals?
You see, Kingsley, you must not lose fact. You must not lose view of the fact that this is not the first time CNN has posted fake news about Nigeria. In year 2007, Jeff Coinage staged a fake news, a fake report about MEND holding 14 Filipinos to ransom. When the federal government complained, just like now, CNN denied and said they stood by their stories, only for them to realize that it was fake, it was paid for. So it's not the first time CNN is posting fake news. And that's why we demand an investigation. Secondly, we did warn also in our press conference of Thursday that governments all over the world who have taken hasty decisions about Nigeria on this issue based on fake news like the CNN report should please seek for the truth. You see, fake news, we've been saying it here and everywhere, that the next World War might be fought based on fake news. And the decision of governments all over the world, if it's based on fake news, will be very risky. And that brings me to the issue of the UK Parliament resolution. Well, we are not panicking at all as a government for two reasons. Number one, The resolution of Parliament of the UK is not the position of the UK government. Secondly, I believe that no serious government would take a decision such as imposing sanction on a country based on fake news without thorough investigation. And this is why we are warning all the foreign countries to beware. They should seek the truth. They should seek for the truth of this matter. Fake news led to the death of 800,000 people in Rwanda in 1994. And fake news today is even much more dangerous because in 1994 there was no social media. The entire NSAS tragedy was fueled by fake news, and of course the medium of choice of fake news is social media. We've seen several videos for the NSAS where celebrities were supposedly killed, only for them to come and say, no, we are alive. And again, another thing we have against CNN is that, look, how come that CNN, in its entire 1 month long investigation, did not even report that 37 policemen were killed, 6 soldiers were killed, 134 police stations were burned down, 164 police vehicles were burned down, 83 government houses were looted. You see, the whole story was unbalanced, was unfair, was irresponsible. And it was as if it was an intent to set Nigerian people against themselves. And this is our position. And honestly, our appeal to all foreign governments is that they have the missions here. There's the federal government, and should please check for the truth of this matter before they take any hasty decisions.
Honourable Minister, there were so many perspectives to the NSAS protests, and the Lekki toll gate is just one of them. One would then wonder why the International Cable Network decided to happen, the Lekki toll gate, while not referencing other incidents which were also destructive and also involved the loss of lives and property. Do we know the reason why they are standing by this toll gate incident?
Well, I think only Nima, Ebagir, and CNN can tell us why they decided to feed the world with a doctored report. But like I said, CNN is not the only international news agency in Nigeria. Like I said here, Damilola Banjo is the BBC Pidgin Service correspondent. She was at the toll gate, and she reported that soldiers came, but they did not fire into the crowd, that they fired into the air. So this is why we believe that, you see, CNN will be doing itself a big disservice, and its credibility will be shot if it does not do a thorough investigation of this so-called investigative report, because we have studied all the tapes.
So what in your context, your perspective, will be a thorough investigation? What will constitute a thorough investigation at this moment?
It's very simple. They should take the original tape of the 57 minutes, 5 seconds of Godson Uyi that they relied so heavily on, and find out whether that tape had been doctored or not. That's the first place to start with. Second is to ask themselves, can there be a massacre without bodies? Can there be a massacre without blood? And even the so-called DJ Switch, who claimed to be streaming live on the site, and who claimed that she was depositing dead bodies at the foot of soldiers, her video still did not show one single dead body and one body. And that's why I said this is probably the world's first massacre without bodies, the first world massacre without blood. CNN, for its own reputation, should go into this. And like I said, if what CNN does, federal government would do the needful. And we have many options open to us. We'll give those options to our chest.
All right, Honorable Minister, let's also look at another aspect of the NSAS protests. Namely, we saw ministers of the Federal Republic returning to their home states for interactions and consultation with a broad spectrum of stakeholders, including young persons. We had the benefit of some ministers appearing on Good Morning Nigeria to tell us what their encounters were, and lessons learned, and therefore what the next steps will be in terms of reportage to the president and what steps the federal government might then take. What was your own experience in terms of your interaction, either as a group or solo as a minister with stakeholders in your domain?
Yeah, I think I've been privileged, not just because I'm a minister from Kwara State, and I actually also went home and I addressed all the stakeholders, traditional leaders, rulers, the youth, students, organized private sector, the labor, everybody across the state. But I've also been privileged to be a member of the federal government delegation led by the chief of staff that went from zone to zone. Incidentally, this time yesterday we were on our way to Porakot. I came back last night. We started with when we met the northern governors and national rulers in Kaduna. Then we followed when we went to Enugu to meet the southeast. Then we followed with southwest when we went to Lagos. And yesterday we concluded when we went to Porakot. And I think we've always been very consistent in our narrative, which is everywhere we went, we try to put things in context. On the one hand, we reminded our audience of the demands of SARS and what had been the response of government to SARS demands. Secondly, what is government doing, was even done to address the issues raised by the NSAS protest. And just for the sake of, reminding ourselves, the NSAS protest demand were 5. They asked for immediate release of all NSAS protesters. They asked for adequate compensation for all victims of police brutality. They asked for an investigation, independent investigation into all cases of police, abuse and brutality. They asked for an immediate, of course, disbandment of SARS. They asked for the evaluation, medical evaluation, and the training of all SARS, personnel before they are deployed into other police service. And then finally, they were even magnanimous enough to ask for better and improved welfare for the police. And you see, by the 11th of October this year, the IGP had dissolved SARS in all the 36 commands of the state and the FCT in response to their demand. By the 12th of October, the president himself had addressed the nation and assured them that the disbanding of the SARS will only be the first step in the comprehensive reform of the police to ensure that the sole mandate of the police and any security organization will be the protection of lives and livelihood, and that all erring officers will be brought to justice. On the 13th, the very next day, the IG summoned all defunct SARS personnel to the headquarters for debriefing. And as a prelude, 1, to the medical evaluation before they are redistributed. On the same day, the federal government panel on the reform of SARS accepted all the 5 demands of the NSAS protesters. And on the 15th, the National Economic Council directed state governments to immediately set up state-based panel of inquiries into police brutality, directed all governors to make contact with the NSAS protesters in their states, directed all state governors to set up panel of inquiry, like I said, which will include youth, students, and NGOs. Directed all state governments to make provision for victim support fund to adequately compensate deserving victims. So you can see that between 11th and 15th, the federal government had more than met the demands of the NSAS protesters. But of course, the demand started growing until the entire NSAS protest was hijacked by hoodlums. So this is the case we made to everybody. And of course, we also were careful and to let them know that the entire NSAS protest was fueled by fake news using the social media. But more importantly, was that we also let our audience understand what effort government has taken and is taking in response to the to youth unemployment, in response to poverty, in response to hardship of the people.
Let me just pause you for a while, Honourable Minister, before we go to the response to you on unemployment and all that. I'd like you to tell us if you got an insight, if the youths, gave you an insight into why, despite government's response to the 545 demands, why they sustained the protest. That's one. But again, going back to CNN's report, the latest report by NEMA talked about the testimony given by Brigadier Taiwo at the inquiry, referencing use of blank bullets and later live bullets, and also your own statement saying that blank bullets were used, and termed it as a controversy. Do you see a controversy in that?
Clear. It's clear. This is even clearer than your name, Clear. With due respect. Clear. What's the controversy? A standard army procedure that when you are going to either enforce a curfew or to the scene of a riot, to go with both blank ammo and live ammo. And the instruction is that you do not use live ammo until the lives of the soldiers are threatened. And anybody, I've spoken to military authorities, and they told me that if you shoot in the air and you see spark, it's blank. That live ammunition does not show spark. But I'm saying, and this is very simple. Let anybody, number one, let CNN produce the bodies. And I went further and said, for God's sake, even if it is true that there were dead bodies, and these bodies were thrown into the lagoon, these bodies, don't they have relations? A month later, we are yet to see anybody come out and say, my son or my daughter was at the toll gate and he didn't come back. So honestly, Clear, this thing is so clear that there's no room for any controversy. Secondly, as to the issue of the response of the youth, you see, you must not forget that even at a point in time, some of the NSAS leaders were dissociating themselves from the violence and from the killings and the lootings of, going on. So, anywhere we went, what the youth kept harping on was the issue of unemployment, was the issue of, poverty and hardship. And that is why we took time also to let them know that even before SARS and SARS protest, the government had put in place programs aimed at alleviating the hardship of Nigerians. And it started first with this 75 billion youth fund, which was approved. The whole idea is to give youth opportunity, really youth in the medium, small and small and medium scale enterprises. We spoke about the MSME Survival Fund. This is another 75 billion Survival Fund, which is broken into three. The first is what we call payroll support. This payroll support is to help small and medium enterprises that have been very badly affected by the COVID-19 pandemic to be able to continue to pay salaries of their staff. And the fund is supposed to help these small companies to take over the salary payment of at least between 3 and 11 of their staff for the next 3 months. And this particular fund is aimed at 500,000 beneficiaries. This was all before NSAS protest. The second arm of the Survivor Fund is what we call the one-off grant for mechanics, hairdressers, keke nap drivers, Okada drivers, and
that's
so
artisanal survivor
yes. And it's a one of 30,000 grant to this category of people, and 313,000 individuals are targeted. Some of them are already receiving this benefit. Then we found out also that many of these MSMEs were not properly registered because some of them could not afford to register. So the government mandated the Corporate Affairs Commission to register 250,000 MSMEs free of charge. Part of the Survivor Fund is that 100,000, individuals, MSMEs, are to benefit from another 50,000, one-off grant. And then there's a takeoff, program, which is when we encourage people in small and medium scale, enterprises to produce things like sanitizers, like hand wash and gloves, and which the government will take over, will buy immediately. But even before,
Honourable Minister, I'm sorry to interject. I'm sure that you should respond to this, because in the course of our interaction with some of your cabinet colleagues who went on this exercise, as well as other government officials who've been on Good Morning Nigeria, part of what has emerged from all of this is that all of these programs that you were talking about, we've had the benefit of discussing them here on Good Morning Nigeria, on some other platforms, and all that. But there appears to be a missing gap, information gap, between, shall we say, the youth in this case, if we're taking them as a special category, and the government. A good number of them will tell you, we are not aware of this. We are not aware of this. So, if you got that sense from your interaction with them, what do you think is required to be done now so that you can have a saturation of requisite information and then instigate the necessary action and reactions from a good number of them, so that the sense of hopelessness that some of them unfortunately continue to carry in their chest withers away?
Kingsley, there's a difference between information gap and not feeling the impact of the program. I regularly said here, we've discussed many of these programs on this same platform. And it's a credit even to the NTA. I see you every day advertising for Nigerians, for your Nigerians, all these programs. Now, the issue really is not whether this is being publicized or not. It's being publicized. But what we found out when we got home was that these programs are not trickling to the grassroots. And that is why we are taking a decision to see how we can, repackage some of these programs. In many areas we went, even traditional rulers said they ought also to be involved in the execution of this program. So I recently wrote, a memo to all my colleagues that we want to a list of all programs of government. So we can also periodically publish them and let them know, where these things are available. But it is not as if we do not, tell Nigerians what programs we have on. But it's that probably in its execution, we need to do some more fine-tuning. You see, we have a lot of challenges between the three, tiers of government. But I don't think this is the forum to expose that. Governance is continuous, tinkering. You have a beautiful program. You look at the execution. If the execution is not going too well, you find means of better execution of it. Probably some of this program probably would need to involve other tiers of government in its execution. But clearly, nobody will say that we do not know that there's Empower, which has employed about 500,000 people in the last 3 years, and another 400,000 people are now going to be employed by this month. Nobody can claim that they are not aware of N-Agric or N-Tech. But you see, largely, when government does these things, those who benefit, will keep it to themselves. And that is why, if you remember, in the run-up to 2018, 2019, in 2019, we did a testimony series where we invited those who had benefited from the Empower, from the conditional cash transfer, from the 1 meal a day in school, from the BOI grants, to come and give their testimonies. This is what the government has been doing to enlighten Nigerians about the various programs of government. When we increase the allowances of youth corpers from 19,000 to 33,000, the beneficiaries, of course, knew.
Because it got to them.
Because it got to them. So, Claire, I will admit that, yes, some of our findings is that some of these programs are probably not reaching those they ought to reach, and would rethink our strategy to ensure that they benefit, that those who ought to benefit from it benefit from such programs.
With the hindsight now.
Why is it not, Honorable Minister, because this fact-finding visitation and interaction, very useful.
Right.
I want to draw in this point, because if you say, fine, it's not trickling down, it's not cascading, some persons have argued that perhaps we need the mechanism of mass mobilization. I wouldn't know what the situation is now. One of the agencies under your ministry, NOAA, has been financially anemic and therefore unable to carry out even its mandate, so that it acts as a repeater station, because it's available in all 774 local governments of the country, and it can engage all of these critical stakeholders, not merely to give out information, but also to provide as a critical source of feedback, so that it is not when a crisis occurs that everyone gets surprised. The programs that you have listed, the testimonies, again, one more time, on Good Morning Nigeria, we have had a number of these persons. You follow. But people will tell you that, oh, no, because part of the anger of these young persons, some of it arising from lack of information or just, sheer heedlessness. So, what do you think needs to be done to revitalize the existing structures?
You see,
Yes.
Kingsley, people forget very easily. As Minister of Information, I've held 17 town hall meetings in conjunction with the National Orientation Agency. The idea of these town hall meetings is to engage the Nigerian public on different issues, including what the government has been doing in respect of whether it's, Empower, conditional cash transfer, or whatsoever. 16 we have held so far. And it is one of the most veritable source of getting feedback from the people. Now, but Nigerians must also understand one thing, that this government came in and has to do with less than 60% of what revenue it used to have, while the demands are just increasing. Number two, the pandemic has not helped any nation. The pandemic, the COVID-19 pandemic, has affected our source of livelihood. So the government is struggling to ensure that the little that we're making gets to everybody. So most of the complaints we hear is not largely just because people are not aware or they are not getting the impact, but because it's probably not reaching as many people as it ought to reach. For instance, I spoke about the payroll support this morning. Payroll support will only affect 500,000, will only benefit 500,000, SMEs. So those who do not benefit from it will necessarily say they have not felt the impact. But this is without denying or accepting the fact that we probably need to tinker more with the execution process of some of these intervention programs.
And that's what I'm going to ask you my next question, Honorable Minister. So with the hindsight now, and from evidence gathered from your interactions with the youths, do you think the government could have responded differently, first to the protest and then to youth engagement in terms of empowerment?
I don't think so. Frankly speaking, you see, because if you're talking about the NSAS, the NSAS protest, I've detailed, day by day, the response of government, and that by the 15th of October this year, the government had responded to all the NSAS protests. As for engaging the youth, from the programs I've just told you now, we started the Empower in 2016, 2017, 3-4 years away from the NSAS protest. And what was Empower about? What about youth? What was Agri about? Agro about the youth? What was Tech about? About the youth? The creative sector, the fund that the CBN intervention they made available, to the creative sector, it's about the youth. And you see, importantly, when you look at even the Survivor Fund, which had been rolled out even before the NSAS program, the government said 45% of this fund was dedicated to women, 5% to the vulnerable. So in terms of being proactive, the government has been very, very proactive in looking, even well before the NSAS process started. We looked at our youth and we said, look, by 2017, we said we must address the issue of the youth. And that's what the Empower thing came on. What are the beneficiaries of Empower? It's people with, OND, HND, and a university degree. And it's on record today that over 500,000 of them are being employed, even though it's not meant to be a permanent thing. They have refused to exit the program.
You talked about, sorry, Kingsley, you talked about earlier on, thinking with the, strategy, the earlier strategy in reaching to the youth. Obviously, it will involve looking at the medium of communication as well as implementation. So, in this respect, are you still going to, what will be the channel of communication now to the youths?
Listen, you see, there are many ways we can reach the youth. But today, one of the fastest ways to reach is social media, no doubt. But don't confuse this with our resolve to regulate the social media. All we are against is irresponsible use of the social media. We are not against social media. Social media is a veritable tool for mobilization. But two issues with social media. So social media must not be allowed to be used irresponsibly. Fake news and disinformation must be tackled. But in the social media itself, as a medium, it cannot be reversed. And please, we are not the only people in the world thinking about, regulating social media. Even the inventors of the social media itself are now saying, yes, content must be regulated. We're talking about content. We're not talking about technology. Technology is fine, but the content.
Okay, I still want to bring you back to the issue of the NSAS protest. I mean, for those who are old enough in the country, again, on Good Morning Nigeria, which is our platform, we had some retired police officers. What we saw after the protests were hijacked were events that were pretty unusual for us. Well, in isolated cases in the past where there had been riots, you had seen a few law enforcement officers who unfortunately lost their lives. But in this case, we saw law enforcement officers, particularly policemen, being targeted by demonstrators and hoodlums, and a number of them lynched. And unfortunately, some of those videos circulated. The initial account said there were 22, but I think that figure has gone up now to about 37 or so. Most unusual. I mean, I had never seen or read anything about that in our Nigerian history. And then we also saw how within just a few days, this was under 1 week, hoodlums, and some person said foodlums as it were, began ransacking warehouses where they thought there were COVID-19 palliatives. And that also then snowballed into attacks on private warehouses where the goods of traders and other persons were raided and taken away. Federal government also did again what was unusual, something that one had not seen in our political management, to say, look, all ministers return to base, gather information, interact with your people, speak to them, hear them, and bring back messages. Plus, the other delegation led by the Chief of Staff interacting around the zones. On a personal level, how do you appraise all of this? Because the anger that we saw in the month of October with this spillover into November was most unusual. What is your personal reaction to all of that as a national entity, and therefore what we need to do going forward?
You see, Kingsley, there's no peace in any part of the globe today. It had been predicted that the COVID-19 pandemic would lead to a lot of unrest in many parts of the country, especially in Africa. Because COVID-19 pandemic has compounded the economic woes of most countries, especially developing countries. Now, so when you look at the NSAS, protest, even though it started peacefully with a request for police reform, clearly some other people had ulterior motives. And that is why even after the federal government had met all the demands of the answers, these people with ulterior motives, some of them probably simply hunger, some of them just, probably hardship, but many of them, for their own personal reasons, say, look, let's just go to destroy, let's go to vandalize. And you made a point. Why were policemen targeted? So, look, we lost 37 policemen. We lost 134 police stations. We lost 162 police vehicles. About 243 public, 234, premises and companies. 81 warehouses. Now, so you can see that this has little to do with answers, but has to do with what I call a global social economic pandemic, which has been worsened by the COVID-19. The government, of course, would study the remote, and immediate, causes of all this. And like rightly said, one of the things that the federal government, Mr. President, has done was, look, go back home and let's see why this happened. And we've all come back with different, results, which has been tabled at council. As a matter of fact, each member of cabinet is presenting his own findings as a result of his interaction with his people. And I think that's going to help a lot in recalibrating even governance. But I agree with you that once there's hardship and there's poverty, it's difficult to reason with citizens. But we must not forget, and I keep saying that what is happening in Nigeria today is not unique to Nigeria. Nigeria has entered recession, but so also as US, so also as UK, so also as Canada, so also as Finland.
Just before we enter the recession, because there are other issues, we would like to talk about more on the social media regulation and recession. I'd just like us to end SARS and take a break. Now that the CNN insists with its so-called updated version of its report, what is government's next position?
Clearly, there's nothing updated in their report. They have not shown us where the soldiers were shooting at people. They have not shown us any dead bodies. Nothing updated. Like I said, CNN is desperate. CNN is grasping at straws. We hope that they will respond to our demand to do a thorough internal investigation in that report. But like I said, the federal government also has options. And those options, like I said, we are keeping very close to our chest.
All right, Honorable Minister of Information, we'll just take a short break. When we come back, we'll now look at the other aspects of our conversation, which has to do with social media regulation and, of course, the recession. You're watching Good Morning Nigerian, the network service of the NTA, Africa's largest TV network. We'll be right back.
The counsel of our fathers.
I believe we have fought one civil war too many in this country. So those who experience it will run away from it.
Nigerian youths, let's build our nation together.
My name is Nando Jamda
Muhammad
Stevita
Hussein Musa Rodina Joel Chinji Said Musa John.
I'm a carpenter. I've been doing this for more than 8 years now.
Ina sai da plantain na kai kimamin shekara
I've been selling my tomatoes for about 10 years now, and I do it for a better Nigeria.
And I do it for a better Nigeria.
And you can see we are doing our small little work to make Nigeria great.
As you can see, I'm a technician and I'm doing it to help myself and to help my generation.
Business.
This message is from the National Orientation Agency. You don't wait for life. You go to meet life. It's not about how many chances you get. It's what you do with what you've got. Cup after cup. Morning after morning. Start strong. Finish strong. It all starts with a Nescafe. Dialogue, empathy, love, and unity. These are vital components of nation building.
For all to be well, we appeal that we should refrain from volatile, provocative, inciting messages and language.
Let's build and not destroy.
All right, you're welcome back here, and still Good Morning Nigeria live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. We still have with us Honorable Minister of Information and Culture, Lai Mohammed, in the studios, and we also have a number of tweets that have come in from our viewers. But before we take those tweets, let's return to the Honorable Minister. Minister, look, you can't run away from the linkages of a number of these issues. Just before we went on that short break, Claire, and I think yourself as well, were talking about the issue of the economy and how this has now, led us into what some experts have described as a shallow recession from which we'll get out. You were also talking about the global socio-economic pandemic aggravated by COVID-19, and our own current recession quite clearly has been a function of the coronavirus pandemic. But there are a number of items on the government's plate to tide over the current situation, to also ensure that, look, those persons who are hoping on relief and a boost on account of hearing you as government officials during your interactions don't now get to say, oh, no, we're in a recession, X, Y, Z. So what should Nigerians expect?
You see, yes, it is true we're in a recession. But what is a recession? Recession comes in when a country records 2 consecutive quarters of negative growth. So it's true we're in recession. But we must go beyond that blank, as assertion to understand that despite that, our economy is doing very well in the circumstances. What do I mean? Now, in the second quarter, we recorded 6.10 negative growth. In third quarter, we recorded minus 3.62. In the second quarter, only 13 of all economic activities were positive. In the third quarter, 17 of them were positive. In the second, actually, the Bureau of Statistics actually thought that the recession would be worse. They were thinking about something like minus 6. Now, then we are also very confident that with the intervention policies, with the fiscal monetary, and the real sector intervention the government has put in place, the recession would be shorter. But when you look at, you look at the main reason why we have entered this recession, I think, is because of the oil sector. Because the oil sector recorded minus 13.89%. And that is the worst in 14 quarters. And of course, it's easy to understand why. With the pandemic, there's low demand for oil. With the pandemic, we have to obey the OPEC, quota. With the pandemic, the airports are shut. Nobody can travel, and so those people who need your oils, and there's generally a low demand for the product all over the world. But when you look at the other non-oil sector, yes, even though it's about minus 2.51%, it's far better than what it was in the second quarter. So overall, yes, we're in a recession, but it was inevitable. And while our second quarter recession was second quarter result was about minus 6.1, South Africa was minus 50. And as we speak today, other Finland, Hungary, Spain, Mexico, Russia, Romania, Belgium, Austria have all fallen into recession. But we are very confident that with the measures we put in place, it will be short-lived.
All right. The Minister of Finance and National Budget and National Planning, in her words, said that this will probably be. She said it will historically, be addressed, and but will that imply policy adjustments in any way?
There's a lot of things that have been done, even in the Finance Bill 2020, which is before the before National Assembly, that is going to incentivize the economy, that is going to make us quickly recover from the recession. You see, it's difficult. It's always a battle to juggle between giving tax reliefs and at the same time raising your revenue. But I think the way it has been done in the Finance Bill 2020 gives us a lot of confidence that we'll be able to address the basic concerns of Nigerians, alleviate their poverty. And if I remember very well, I think one of the things that has been done is that I think certain categories of people have been exempted from tax and things like that. And I think this is, and of course, also some of the companies have been giving tax relief at the same time, and this is going to invigorate, the economy. So we are all very confident that barring any other major.
But there's the lingering issue of the feel-good factor that citizens expect. And I recall that, there were explanations profiled at the time, but we have seen the impact on the pressure on inflation, because inflation has been climbing. 2 or 3 main sources have been identified as being causative for this. One, we saw, for instance, the deregulation of the downstream sector. Citizens are yet to mostly acclimatize to the fact that you have price fluctuation arising from this. Are there measures to probably mitigate this? I'm not saying return to a subsidy regime, because there are quite good reasons for saying, look, get rid of the subsidy. Second point, we also saw a climb in electricity tariff and the inefficiency in the distribution chain. Those inefficiencies have been outlined and discussed, but we do hope that the current meter system might help. But the per unit cost remains high and persons are grumbling. So that's one leg of it. So people are just wondering, are they likely to get relief from these sources of pressure. Fuel, it impacts virtually on everything, high cost of electricity and all that going forward.
No, I think we talk about fuel deregulation. I think the government has made it very clear that it's not going to tamper with the pump price. That as the prices fluctuate, the citizens will either pay less or pay more. But I think what is most important is what does government do with the money saved from the subsidy? And I think this is very important. This is what we apply into all our intervention programs. I spoke about 75 billion youth fund, 75 billion survival fund. I spoke about the 5 million solar home system that is going to be implemented. All this on their own would create and resuscitate the economy. As for power, I know that both Labour and government, we are resolving the knotty issues, because our understanding is that it's only people who consume, say, probably 12 hours or 18 hours uninterrupted power supply that will be affected by the new tariff. So I think, and that has been sorted out between the Labour, organized Labour, and the government.
Honourable Minister, I want to, again, let's go back to the issue of social media. And I will not, I must ask you this next question. Again, I'm taking it from the CNN report. And they relied, again, apart from social media, they relied on the feeds given to them by the DJ, the young lady DJ Switch. And the minister has also come out to talk about DJ Switch and her involvement. Is she wanted?
I think even the Brigadier Ahmed said, who's running after her? Who is running after DJ Switch? If she has evidence, I think she should come and present the evidence. Why is she seeking asylum? Why nobody is after her? And this is a lady that, you see, don't forget that DJ Switch first tweeted that 78 people, 78 people were killed at the toll gate. From there, she changed to 15, and now 7. I mean, these are not credible people. Now, and simply, let's be clear. We are talking about regulating content. And when you want to regulate, you need many things. Consultation with stakeholders. You need superior technology. But all we are saying is that fake news, disinformation, should not be allowed to destabilize our country. Fake news has destabilized many countries. It is destabilizing many countries today. We all know that the University of Ohio conducted a research that claimed that said that the presidential election of the US in 2016 was influenced by fake news, largely by the Russians, on 3 grounds. 1, there was fake news circulated that Donald Trump had been endorsed by the Pope. 2, that when Hillary Clinton was Secretary of State, she authorized sales of arms and ammunition to jihadists. 3rd, that she's in very poor health. All the 3 are found to be false, but it repressed Hillary Clinton's vote. So we must not for one moment underestimate the influence and the destabilization potential of fake news.
What within in regulating, break down the context of this regulation, because a lot of people get ideas when you say regulation.
Regulation is very simple. Fake news, disinformation will not be allowed. And I think that is the key to content that is harmful. You see, because when people talk about regulation, they just talk about government. What about our kids? What about our infants? And we are not alone in seeking for regulation. Regulation is not about stifling the press. No. Don't confuse free speech with fake news.
Yeah, but free speech has a responsibility adjunct.
Precisely, that would simply say we are only talking about responsible use of the social media. And anybody who is not going to purveyors of fake news are the only ones that are worried about our regulation. Any other honest user of the internet should not be worried.
Are you considering, rather than coming out with laws that will check misinformation, is the minister also considering deployment of technologies?
Absolutely.
Which is
that's what's first thing I said. You see, when you want to regulate social media, it's a joint effort between security, communication, and information. And this is what happens everywhere. And I'm glad to say that we have already put in motion the machinery for doing this. But of course, we also need to consult with stakeholders so that they would not think you are imposing. As a matter of fact, they stand to gain more from regulating social media free of fake news, free of disinformation than any other person.
Yeah, well, I just want, Honorable Minister, this can be an academic exercise, and you have different perspectives on regulation, for instance, of the social media. Some scholars would argue that while you are grappling with the new media and how effectively to deal with the issues arising therefrom, there are extant laws that could be utilized to deal with persons who have infractions against the law. And I think there have been a couple of prosecutions, either in Kaduna or elsewhere, of persons who had purveyed apparently fake news and all of that. And some other persons will say, no, that is not sufficient. You will need an omnibus piece of regulation that will deal with the issues relating to technology, consequences, source of origin, and so on and so forth. So it can be a slippery slope.
I think you've answered the question. You see,
well, I'm just making a comment.
Yes. For instance, look at the issue of Kaduna you raised. It's been on for 3-4 years. But why must we allow the damage to be done? Because the example you gave in Kaduna was the example of a celebrity that posted on his social media that some students had been killed in Sabon Wire College of Education. And that was capable of instigating reprisals. So what we want to do is have adequate technology, policy and regulation that would not allow such fake news, to become the order of the day. So, and like I said, we intend to carry everybody along in regulating. Don't forget that all of us will not be ministers forever. Our tenures will end very soon. We're only looking for a better Nigeria, not just a better, administration for President Muhammadu Buhari. So people should not be afraid when we say we want to regulate social media. We are only interested in the responsible use of the social media.
Okay, thank you very much, Honorable Minister. Well, let's listen into the tweets that have come in from our viewers, quite a number of them. Our first set of tweets, Festus Akimboyewa tweet says, while NSAS cannot be implicated in our current recession, which is correct, the senseless destruction of government and private property and the massive looting of businesses during the protests will make it difficult for our economy to recover quickly from the recession. This is probably exaggerated, but I know it's a big challenge. Those who suffered losses, the insurance firms have already indicated that they will pay claims arising from those things. And Lagos State, for instance, also set up a fund to assist persons, whose businesses were negatively and heavily impacted by the destruction. But whether or not the destruction will sufficiently on its own impact our quick recovery from the recession, I think is a bit far-fetched, Claire.
All right, I think I will just take the tweets in no particular order. Mike Anyakwo says, we shall never tolerate any protest again. If you have any grudge against government, come let's discuss. That's a good statement from PMB. NSAS is a watershed in our political evolution. And as PMB, that is the president rightly pointed out, let's settle on round table if there are issues. Youth programs spreading across the country is welcome development.
All right. Ajani Olaoluwa says the demand of NSAS is way beyond SARS. It has transmitted to demand for good governance.
Okay, and just taking a look, Stephen, we've got multiple of them. This one is coming from, again, Festus Akimboyewa. All patriotic Nigerians must put pressure on CNN and their armchair reporter, Nima El-Bagri, to end their bad journalism against Nigeria. Nigeria is our country, and no foreign media with preconceived prejudice will be allowed to set it on fire.
Ibrahim Abdusalam Bello, there's always a takeaway from every experience. The protest seemed okay, now that should be the correct tense initially, but the resultant effects tell us that dialogue at all times remains the most potent means of resolving whatever issue there is. We must all wake up to our responsibilities and never allow a repetition.
Okay, Olubayo Abiodun, let it be emphasized that both the impact and information on government social investment interventions have huge gaps. I have widowed younger sister with 5 children who have not benefited, though she's into petty trading, and another sister into hair salon.
Law Alpha C, government should be able to develop a strategy for effective crisis management by addressing concerns of citizens swiftly as they emerge and not take genuine concerns of people for granted.
Jones Ferrari, NSAS is a disgrace to Nigeria and CNN is a disgrace to the world. The federal government is trying its best. Let's give them time and be patient. If possible, let's join governance to grow our country. Thank you, President Buhari, for the survival funds.
Cecilia Okoroma says the aftermath of NSAS protests for me remains the reawakening of the consciousness of the import of good governance. The beating of the drum of hatred and disintegration is a song of most of our youth regularly. Hence the need for Noah to embark on the mindset reorientation. Okay, this one is to the Honorable Minister. He says, Honorable Minister, masteristic. Honorable Minister, sir, Ash NSAS, Ash protest has no leader. Who gave government the 5-point agenda they are working with? What about other NSAS requests, like cost of governance? Why did government turn blind eyes to them? Now, we have this from Olubayo Abiodun. Let it be emphasized that both the impact and information on government social investment intervention have huge gaps. I have a widowed younger sister with 5 children who has not benefited. I think I've taken that. Though she's into petty trading. I don't get that. Another sister is into hair salon also. Yes. Well, okay. Basically, I think those are the tweets that we can accommodate. As I said, some of them, of course, have dealt with a number of issues. Honorable Minister, we're getting pressed now. What are your closing thoughts?
Well, my closing thought is that, yes, the NSAS protest has come and gone. The lessons have been learned. What are those lessons? Those lessons learned is that, 1, the youth started out, asking for very legitimate reforms. 2, the government responded very responsibly and timeously. 3, that the entire protest was hijacked by hoodlums. 4, that fake news and disinformation played a major role in fueling the crisis. 5, that some international organizations, like notably the CNN, came out with, a report which we have faulted on the grounds that it is not balanced and it is not fair, and that they sought their stories from, unverified sources. Of course, it is clear also from the NSAS protest that the role of NGOs should be more satellite on the roles of NGOs, because everybody is focusing on what happened at Tollgate or what did not happen there. And nobody is even thinking about the 37 policemen who were killed or the 6 soldiers who were killed. They also have human rights. They have relations. They have families. And of course, like I said in my press conference, I'm very proud of the maturity and restraint with which our security handled the entire NSAS. Otherwise, we have led to more casualties.
Honourable Minister, I'm afraid I have to stop you at this point. We've really eaten deep into our time. Honourable Minister of Information and Culture, Lai Mohammed, speaking to us on quite a number of issues arising